Well, a very good morning, good evening, or good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. I'm Anah Parreli, and of course, Lorena's Labyrinth is my baby. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back. Thank you very much for your ongoing support. If you're a returning visitor, you're going to know, but the newbies won't know, that I put timing chapters in the description, and of course the returning visitors are going to know this is because I will quite regularly go down a tangent as we do. I call it, I get sidetracked. I do transcripts, but hello, I'm human, I'm not AI, and I get sidetracked because memories might come back, or I might have something further to add beyond the transcript when I'm actually doing these recordings. So anyway, I know time is precious for everybody, so feel free to jump from one slide to the next. I certainly won't be offended. The only thing I would ask actually of people, because I'm getting to that stage, is if you like the content, can you please just give me a thumbs up, because that will help to keep me motivated, of course, and inspired to keep putting up content for you. Be aware that I invite everybody to contribute to the conversation, because I am not the be all and end all of knowledge. I'm learning and growing the same as everybody else, but I share my information with you freely as part of making us more aware, I guess, and more knowledgeable about things that we might be interested in. You know, that doesn't mean to say that you have to take on board anything I say or any of my experiences. It just means that they might be of value for you, and if they are, a thumbs up would be great. Thank you. In the meantime, what am I going to tell you today? Today we're going to be talking about smoky quartz. Now there's a realize there is a reason for that, and that is because I actually really love a crystal called smoky citrine, and I've got that scheduled to come up in the very near future, and of course that should tell you something just in its name. Now I've already done the video on citrine, so it's there. I might pop it in the link if people are interested in it, but today we're going to talk about smoky quartz, and then next week we're going to be talking about smoky citrine. Okay. Anyway, in the meantime, I invite you to contribute, and I say thank you. Even if it's just a g'day and where you are, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. So most people that have been working in the metaphysical world, at least them, but even if you haven't, most people have heard of smoky quartz. So I would imagine they have anyway. It's very popular, it's very versatile, it's also very pretty. It's a gorgeous looking crystal, and it's got a range of therapeutic and healing properties. I don't know actually anybody in the metaphysical world that doesn't at least have some piece of it, even if it's a tumbled stone. Not everybody, of course, has large clusters of any type of crystal. But more importantly for you, if you're considering buying smoky quartz for therapeutic purposes, as in the metaphysical ones, it's considered to be a powerful crystal, very powerful, and very practical, and certainly one that I would recommend everybody have as part of their collection, even if it's that tumble stone. Now, returning visitors are going to know that I'm not hung up on the Zodiac and the recommendations of a crystal for a specific sun sign or star sign or whatever. Obviously, a crystal is going to carry certain metaphysical properties, and an astro sign will have certain vulnerabilities, shall we say, or strengths. And sometimes it's pretty much a knife edge, as in some people might consider strength of character or whatever to be forceful or too strong, you know. It's all around perspective. But either way, the crystals can balance certain attributes, and in the case of smoky quartz, it's said to balance out, by some people, Scorpio, Sagittarius and Capricorn. I am, of course, of the belief that it doesn't matter what your star sign is. If you feel drawn to a crystal, then this is the crystal for you. And there's a difference between feeling drawn to a crystal and wanting a crystal, which I actually do talk about multiple times. You will be drawn to a crystal generally if you walk into a store. This is why I love face-to-face selling as opposed to buying online. When you walk into, say, a crystal shop and you can't leave without it because it feels like you need to take it home. Now, other people will identify which crystal they need for their, and that was quotation marks, need for their spiritual growth, and that'll be because of energy. They might feel it, and some people, with respect, will use a pendulum to guide them, to allow it, because that might be a video on itself on how a pendulum works. I don't tend to rely on pendulums, just between ourselves. I don't have a problem with them. I just prefer to feel energy, each to their own. So the regular visitors are going to know that I always do an overview of a crystal's property, with my throat, my croaky throat, and then I go into it in more detail further down in the dedicated slides to specific attributes. So for you newbies, bottom line is there's a metaphysical overview here that when I say that smoky quartz is considered to be a power stone, it's extremely powerful, and it's considered to be very grounding, very progressive, to help each one of us to move forward in our lives. Of course, you would attune your crystal to whatever your needs are, and I've got videos on how to do that. I'll put a link into the description as well. I'm trying to do this all the time now. But anyway, the thing is, when we first start working with energy and expanding ourselves and trying to reach our potential, there's a lot of fear involved, that fear of the unknown, fear of energy, fear of spirit, and that kind of thing. So it can leave us really paralyzed. Unless we face our fears, then we can become stuck in this perhaps darker emotional or even physical space if we're living in an unhappy environment, And the thing is too, that unless we actually actively work towards facing and recognizing our fears, understanding them, and being able to discern from valid fears and what are the figments of our imagination, shall we say, then we can be stuck in these unhappy circumstances. I mean, perhaps there is a conversation to be had here about what's a valid fear and what's a figment of our imagination. So just to touch on that, okay, if I was looking to move house, actually, no, let's talk about travel. Let's talk about travel, because realistically, there is discernment. There is a recognized risk with something that is real. So, for instance, I'm interested in getting some Libyan desert glass, and I have seen online that you can purchase it from Egypt or from Libya, but of course, both of these countries are discouraged to Westerners to a level for visiting because of the threat of physical safety for us. Now, particularly where the Libyan desert glass is gathered from, that's right on the border where all the conflict is. So realistically, if I was to recognise that fear and do a discerning factor, then I'd have to say, look, the evidence supports the fact that this is a real threat. I'm not living in fear about it. It's a real threat, so I need to recognise it, understand what the risks are. Actually, I might die if I go there, so that's not going to be a wise choice for me, and then move on from it. On the other hand, I might decide that it's time to take a step into the unknown, and there's nothing overt there to indicate a threat or danger, but I'm scared anyway. That's the fear of growth. Okay, so that can be valid too. It might be that your fears might be that if you take this move, you might experience a health risk, you might experience a mental health crisis, because you have a history of anxiety or something like that. So when we discern what is real and what is figments, we don't necessarily turn around and say, well, just because I'm having these anxious thoughts makes them to be invalid. It's like, well, okay, these are real concerns. That's the bottom line. So what can we do? We don't have to stay stuck in that, but what we can do is put in safety buffers and follow our inner guidance. If our whole inner guidance is screaming that we need to make this move, then we make it safely. And the way that we do this is obviously to be grounded and centered, to follow the gut instinct, because not everybody is open to communicating with their guides. And in fact, a lot of the time, to be able to access and communicate with guides and guardians and our angels and this kind of thing. Look, I know this is not for everybody, okay? So just, if it's not for you, just put aside words like guides, guardians and angels and stick with gut instinct, okay? Because not everybody is into that. But most people are into the idea that actually gut instinct and intuition is real, that they can follow that, if not, because sometimes actually communicating with guides can be a bit contraindicative, especially if a person's got a history of psychosis, shall we say. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Anyway, ultimately, what we're talking about with smoky quartz and why I recommend it for everybody is it helps to take those first steps towards self-realization, self-discovery, and being able to live and reach our true potential, and to step past those fears, to put our trust in the universe and the processes of the divine. So before we talk about the mineral information, just putting it out there so people are fully aware, I am not a geologist. I am not any kind of expert trained in anything to do with rocks or minerals or whatever. What I am is an appreciator of them. I love them and I love what they bring to my life. So the content that you find around the what we would call the expert information is what I've gained from researching online. Now, this may be accurate, it may not. You've got to use your own discretion and do your own research if you're particularly interested in a crystal. But I would ask and encourage people that do have some knowledge that they can share with us, that they contribute here. And especially if we've got some geos or somebody like that that really does know their stuff, that would be very helpful. Now, anyway, from a mineral perspective, this is the information I've gathered. Obviously, it's a quartz. It's called smoky quartz. That should be fairly logical. As far as the colour goes, it tends to be a brownish, even black at times, although a lot of the times crystals that look black, when you put them up to the light, you actually see another colour within them. And this is the same with purple amethyst. You know, some of these really dark ones actually have a violet coloured centre. And smoky quartz, you can hold that up to the light, excuse me as I smack my lips, you can hold that up to the light and see that it's got a brownish centre to it, you know, even if it's on the black. Now, I've got some that is almost, well, in fact, it looks black, that I bought from China more recently, and I thought that I'd been sold some dodgy stuff that had been irradiated, but upon really close inspection, I can actually see that it's got the smoky at the base and then it becomes black, and there's a reason for that, and I will talk about that later. But for now, just to let you know, because it's a smoky quartz, it's relatively hard, like all the quartzes, and it sits at about 7 on the scale. And I never know, I think that's mineral of hardness scale is, and I don't even know if you pronounce it Mos or Moz, to be honest. Maybe somebody can clarify that for me. That would be helpful. Yes, okay, so as far as transparency goes, it does tend to be translucent. It does tend to be glassy looking. You get it all around the world. We have it in Australia, as I mentioned. Or did I mention that? I've certainly seen smoky quartz that's Australian stuff. Anyway, obviously most people have heard about the stuff from South America, Brazil. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the best smoky comes out of South America as well. But I'm not 100% sure about that. I know definitely with the purple amethyst, the clear, and the citrine, that all comes out of South America. But anyway, it's definitely found in China as well. I just want to check my transcript so I'm not telling you a whole heap of rubbish. Just okay, the names of the locations off the top of my head include the US, of course. There's a lot of it there. And I wanted to make mention of the fact that the clusters that I bought from China, they've come complete with dirt, actually, not in large quantities, but you've certainly got the dirt around the base of the cluster, and you can see where it's actually broken away. I wish I'd taken a photograph of it. You can see where it's broken away from the host rock. So it would be like looking at this image here, but instead of having that white cementy type stuff underneath it, it's actually just the cluster, and there's some of, I guess, the original rock type dirt attached to the base of the cluster. I don't think it's been acid bathed or anything like that to wash it. So when it comes to buying tips, I thought, I am going to talk about black quartz here as well so that people can tell the difference. And I think it's really important that people know this because it could save them a fortune. For example, if you look at the image on the right of the slide here, you see this beautiful cluster for sale. and it's called Enhanced Smoky Quartz. Now, to the credit of the seller, they've said that it was subjected to heat, which burns the aluminium within the stone and turns it black. You can tell at the base of the cluster that there's white. There's not a lot of smoky that was there. Anyway, point being, okay, to me, I think once you've irradiated it like that and heat treated it, you can call it enhanced if you want, but it's no longer smoky quartz. It's just, an ornament. And this is actually what the seller is saying as well. He's selling that for $5,000 US. All right, this is why it's worth having this conversation. Now, when we say 5,000, we're talking US dollars. It's based in the US. He also does state that the weight of this particular cluster, it must be massive because it's 16 kilos. But from where I sit, I don't care that it's 16 kilos. $5,000 for that ornament. And he makes suggestions. Pop it in a setting with a lot of clear quartz. Really? I don't think so. Good luck trying to sell it. What I did also see is that sometimes where there was a conversation between geos that people inadvertently call black quartz smoky quartz when they're selling it. And so there is a difference between black quartz and smoky quartz if you get it, and that is that it doesn't grow or form in the same way as smoky quartz. As you see here, just looking at the differences between the enhanced and the black quartz, okay, you've got that enhanced, you've got a cluster there. You've got the black quartz, which is glowing as a singular double terminated. When we talk about double terminated, we're talking about points at both ends within its host rock. Now, I did see actually a mine operation where there is really large smoky quartz crystals in the wall that the miners are actually retrieving, and they're not in the clusters as I could see here. But as I say, look, I'm no expert on this, and I did reach a stone wall with my studies, so if there's a geo that's got some information, that would be very helpful. Point being, though, that when we talk about smoky quartz, what have I got? You can distinguish it from other crystals because of the inclusions. And it mentioned a word, I hope I pronounce it correctly, dichroism. I had to Google, obviously, what that meant, and I think I've interpreted it as the way the light shines through the smoky crystal itself. Now, I don't have any really good examples here to be able to show you, but all quartz should be able to reflect rainbows. I do have some smoky quartz points here. They're just small ones, and they do have the rainbows within, which is very important, so I know that they're genuine. But what they don't have is, I like to call it the crustiness and crunchiness that you can actually see within the makeup of a crystal. Some people think that all quartz crystals, to be of good quality, they have to be perfectly clear. I would say, actually, I quite like the ones that have got all the layers within them, because they just seem to bring forth a feeling. And the more crunchiness, this is not a scientific word, it would be great if somebody could help me out here, the more rainbows you get in it, and I love the rainbows. Okay, so apparently you can tell smoky from the glass, because this is another way, there are fakes and frauds. The glass ones won't be able to throw rainbows unless they've been titanium coated, which you should be able to tell that fairly clearly. And the other thing is that if it's fake and glass, then it's going to most likely have air bubbles inside of it. And just one little extra add-on here is, if you look at the crystal ball, and I don't think you'll be able to get a good look at it, but maybe you can expand your screen or whatever. When I talk about the crunchiness and crustiness or whatever inside the ball, that crystal ball has got it. And it might even be called crackling, I'm not sure, but that ball in itself, I can actually tell without having held it in my hand that one's going to be beautiful, and it will throw the rainbows. Of course, the tower there shows different shades, shall we say, of the browns and the clears throughout. What I do like about doing these videos is that I actually learn something every time I make a video, and I learn maybe, sometimes quite a bit actually. In regard to smoky quartz though, what I found really interesting was that I had no idea. If we look at this one on the left-hand side, the image, that is actually smoky quartz from the French Alps. Now, until I'd done this video, if somebody popped a piece like that in my hand, because it's outside of my personal experience, I would have thought somebody was having a lend of me, and that it was somehow fabricated or manufactured. I wouldn't have thought that it was the genuine article. However, I did find it on a geology website, so I'm hoping that that's actually accurate, that I haven't made an error of judgment here. But, you know, if there's any geos, once again, I say I invite you to give your information. The other thing that I learned too is that generally speaking, smoky quartz apparently doesn't come in a geode. The geode is the image that we have on the right side. Apparently that's quite rare, and apparently this geode here was from a place in Chihuahua, if you don't mind, Mexico, and the person that put the photograph up had a certificate of verification from the seller stating that, you know, which mine it was located at and that kind of thing. And they had been informed by the seller how rare it was, because what I found interesting about that particular geode, reading the story of it, was that the seller didn't crack them open before they sold them. Basically, if you wanted to buy a geode, you went in and you paid the money, you were handed your geode, and then you got to cut it in half, which is what this purchaser or the owner of this item here did. They got their geode, cut it in half, and apparently the seller wanted to buy it back from them because it was so rare. So there you go. Now, beyond obviously being able to identify the product, it's actually really important to establish if what you're paying is a fair price, because like I pointed out before, $5,000 for irradiated smoky quartz is just something I wouldn't even consider doing. I wouldn't feel drawn to that crystal, but maybe somebody does. You know, each to their own, as I say. But ideally, you have an idea of what you're willing to pay for a product, and then you look at the currency, you decide whether or not it crosses over into conversion. Just on that point, $5,000 at the moment US would probably be pretty close to about $7,500, if not more, Australian for that cluster, and that's just lunacy and insanity as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, yes, you do your currency conversions, you work out what the freight costs are going to be. If you're buying off a platform, there may be hidden fees, there may be percentages, there may be tax added to it. So, you know, it's about being informed before you actually go ahead and make that payment. Better still, go to a local shop and buy it from there. Now, for those that are interested, I thought I would throw this image in here. I think it deserves a video of its own, all on its own. It's actually called Marella Quartz, and often called Marella Smoky Quartz, and it's only found in Victoria, Australia. So yes, I just thought I would let you know about this one, but it also has metaphysical attributes which makes it worthy of a separate video. It probably would be a short video actually, which would be ideal for these purposes. So I did obviously touch on the metaphysical properties before, but now of course we're going to start looking at them more specifically for mind, body and spirit, starting with the spirit of course. So I've mentioned already that it is considered to be a power stone. It's supposed to support protecting your boundaries of your aura, to stop you taking on board the energy of other people that you might bump into during your day-to-day living. It's certainly recognised as a crystal of self-discovery and self-realisation, and it's believed to, as I said, support your development and progress across your spiritual pathway, attune yourself to the energies and balance out the energy within your aura. What else have I got? As I say that. Oh, okay. It's really important when we talk about energetic balance. I'm glad I looked at my notes here. When a lot of people start out on their spiritual journey, they've generally had to face some pretty significant challenges. they're quite vulnerable, and energy feels good. Once you start tapping into it, it starts to feel really good. And so a lot of people will spend too much time going off with the fairies, perhaps in meditation. They can lose themselves using energy as a form of escapism. Now, if you're not aware of this, I used to work in the mental health field and in a psychiatric type setting. And a prime example of this was actually one of the women that lived there. And I would speak to her, and she would be meditating like 6 hours a day, she would say, and just basically being out there and certainly not able to cope and function within her day-to-day living. So this is what we call about grounding, okay? So it's fine to use the energy, or, certainly to help cope with the challenges of life. But when we're out there all the time, we're not actually addressing the problems that we do have and facing them. So function becomes impeded. So it's really important to be grounded, and that enhances our decision making, because when we're grounded and being logical and rational, we tend to make healthier decisions, okay? When we're ungrounded, we actually can compound problems for ourselves, because this is the consequence of poor decision making. I'm not going to go too far into it right now, but this is why, yes, absolutely, for beginners, smoky quartz is right up there as a crystal that they should at least wear and carry with them, and to make sure that they cleanse regularly, and to be able to differentiate between what is guidance and what is simply their own mind chatter telling them what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Because often what's happening in those kind of situations is they're so busy listening to the voices in their head or what they want to hear, as opposed to that quiet voice of the guides behind saying, no, try another path. I mean, not that the guides would ever say no anyway. They would be going probably more like, you might want to rethink that. But anyway, so other benefits include dream work, especially if you're looking to get messages or to understand the messages that you're receiving in your sleep state. So dream recall becomes important. And then there's the interpretation and understanding of dreams, because dreams are rife with symbolism. There's lots of books out there. If you're trying to manifest, it's believed to help a person to manifest and realize those goals that they're trying to achieve. What else have I got written here? Just that when there's a grounded approach, part of the reason why manifestation occurs is because we've got cooperation and teamwork, because, sometimes there's a shared goal, and so it brings other people on board to help out. One of the most exciting features of smoky quartz, I believe, is the capacity where it's attributed to dispel all negativity, at least transform it or bring it to the surface so that it can be released. Another function of it, it's believed to protect a person against EMFs, okay? So in this instance, it would be recommended perhaps that I have a piece by my computer, which I don't. So maybe that's something I can look at in the near future. Maybe I'll go and get some out of the other room. But you could, if you were that way inclined, you could actually tape a little bit onto your mobile phone if that's the kind of stuff that you're into. It's definitely recommended if a person's going through a mental health crisis, okay? Because usually if somebody's in the process of having a mental health crisis, and let's call it the old labels, which could be a nervous breakdown or having a psychotic break or whatever, they are way too far in their head. They're out thinking and thinking, either ruminating on the past stuff, locked in the past, trapped in the past pain, or they are frantic about what might happen in the future. So when they're having a healing crisis, if they can access this smoky quartz, the idea is, excuse me while I have another cough, that it brings them back to the present, to the here and now. It supports them to remain grounded right now in the present and to stop this overthinking. Another recommendation is that a person wear or hold or carry smoky quartz as an amulet for personal safety when they're walking around in the evening. I just realised there is another protective aspect to smoky quartz that I haven't put on the slide. just that it helps a person to feel safe and secure. I will leave it at that and go on to the physical attributes. Now, from a physical perspective, you can see here that it offers a large range of attributes. But before we talk about them, let's actually talk about the disclaimer and the caution that if you've got a physical condition or a psychological condition, you would not disengage from your treating professionals and rely on your crystals to get you through whatever it is that you're going through. Basically, use your crystals as a complement to whatever you're currently experiencing. That would be my advice. And I say that as somebody who loves crystals and does believe in the energy of them. But what I don't know and I can't answer is why it seems to work for some people and why it doesn't work for others. And the other thing is, I personally, when we look at this slide here and see the attributes, that's outside of my experience. Okay, this is not information that I'm aware of that I personally can say, yeah, look, I know people that have said this to me. Okay, so I'm very clear about what is my experience and what isn't. Anyway, at the top of the list is that smoky quartz is often used as a treatment for cancer, but not actually necessarily to treat cancer, but rather to help them recover, because treatment and cancer both carry symptoms as well. So if they're recovering from radiation therapy or chemotherapy or whatever, that certainly depletes the person as well. And I think it's worth a mention here that when we talk about treating cancer and these symptoms that we're talking about, smoky quartz is up there as a primary master healer for managing the symptoms, okay? So let's be very clear. We're not saying it cures cancer. We're saying that it may help to alleviate the symptoms of radiation and chemotherapy while they are undergoing their treatments, okay? Now, bearing in mind we're talking about radiation, if somebody's been exposed to radiation, perhaps in the workplace or other, it's said to also support recovery there too. Now, other things, tumours, I mean, once again, I'm saying this is a large claim, but whether they're benign or malignant, a person would be recommended to work with, carry, hold smoky quartz, okay? If you've got as I stumble over my words, if you've got a susceptibility to cancer in your family, because some cancer is hereditary, then it might be worth considering that if you wear smoky quartz, I'm not sure, maybe it will act as a protector against developing cancer. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, okay? It is believed to be a detoxifier and to support the health of the physical organs in the body. I've listed them here: liver, kidneys, pancreas and adrenals. Bit of a spelling error there. I'll fix that if I remember. It's supposed to support the digestive system, and that's the treatment of any types of stomach disorders and ailments and potentially stomach ulcers. If a person suffers from pain and inflammation, especially of the joints, then it's recommended for them, especially if they suffer from arthritis. It's supposed to enhance flexibility and mobility. Now, if you've got one of these conditions that I'm reading out, or you know somebody close to home that has any of these conditions and has been working with smoky quartz or is about to, do let me know the outcomes, please. Okay, so if somebody is suffering from exhaustion and fatigue, or recovering from a health crisis, be it physical or emotional, or a disease, it's said to help speed up the recovery process. Now, I've got to be honest, when I found that one, I thought immediately, I've got an auntie who's been really struggling to recover from COVID and reacted badly to COVID vaccinations, and I just wish that she was open to trying out smoky quartz, shall we say. But maybe you know somebody that's willing to give it a shot. Anyway, it's also believed to support fertility by boosting the libido, which is great news, I guess, for anybody trying to have a baby. Geopathic stress, of course, is where there's underlying environmental factors that interrupt a person's health, leaving them fatigued or with other illnesses. So it's believed that smoky quartz can help to manage some of these symptoms and offer, I believe it's a short-term protection against this geopathic stress. But if you've got that, all I would say is you need to be very mindful from an energy perspective. I'm talking energy, okay? Be very mindful about your boundaries and keep your smoky quartz cleared and cleansed regularly, because it will be soaking up the negativity around you. So you want to keep it in prime function. Another place that it's recommended is actually the workplace, as part of enhancing that teamwork and protecting the energy of the organisation or the space against conflict. So it's worth a shot. If you've got some conflict in the office, maybe put some on your desk. So this is getting to be a very long video again, and I'm sorry about that. So I'll avoid reading all of this on the slide, and I'll just try and pick some of the key notes that I've got in my transcripts, which is basically where there is mental health illness, Smoky Quartz is right up there as a recommendation. It helps develop those sense of awareness to recognise triggers before they become bigger than Ben-Hur. Certainly, I've mentioned the business of the mental health crisis, particularly in a mental health setting, but you don't have to be having a crisis to be able to benefit from it. If you suffer from things like anxiety and depression, or even some of these behavioural disorders, then it would be expected, based on the information about Smoky Quartz, that you would receive some benefit from wearing it or working with it on a regular basis. I'm going to mention this business because if the person is in a psychiatric setting, obviously there's a level of hysteria that's often involved with that. So what I saw was that Smoky Quartz is believed to act as a mild sedative to a person, which helps them to relax, of course, especially if they're feeling spaced out. That could be delusional or battling psychotic episodes. It's said to help dissolve the internal contraindications, which in the mental health setting we would call cognitive dissonance, and that's where the heart is saying one thing, or the gut instinct is saying one thing, but the head is saying another. And I interpret that, the way I explain that is, when you know what needs to be done, but you don't like the idea of doing it because your head is telling you that maybe if I stick at it for a bit longer, it might change, and your gut's saying, no, it's not going to change, okay? So it connects them, pulls them together, where there becomes a recognition that actually of what truth is. So it's also believed to clear the mind, declutter it, as I've mentioned, enhance decision making. It's recommended for business owners as well, because it supports innovation, new ideas, and being financially astute. Other people it's recommended for are students and anybody that's in the process of learning new tasks, because it's about helping to process this new information, incorporate that into your sense of being as knowledge, and to break through the blocks and barriers that we have in place as part of our personal growth and development. So when it comes to Smoky Quartz, depending on who you speak to, it's associated with the root or the base chakra through to the solar plexus. Now, I'm not sure I totally agree, okay? It just depends on what you're talking about, because technically speaking, what I call Smoky Quartz is probably very much related to the base chakra. What I call Smoky Citrine has got the hues of yellow, and it's absolutely stunning. That video, as I say, is coming up. That I link to the solar plexus as well. And this is probably why people say Smoky Quartz is for anything from the base through to the solar plexus, and that's because technically speaking, Smoky Citrine actually doesn't exist, because all Smoky Citrine is actually Smoky Quartz, okay? But I'm doing that video on Smoky Citrine, as I say, in the next couple of weeks, and yeah, I'll leave that conversation for then. Now, I picked this image of Smoky Quartz because you can actually see that there's a whole range of shades of Smoky Quartz. You know what I mean? It's all very unique. But anyway, how can we use it? Well, yeah, you can have it like this. You can have it as an ornament, whether you're into metaphysical or not, or you can keep it out, as I said, in the environment, maybe at work. I don't think I would want to take a piece as pretty as that into work. But you can meditate with it, you can hold it. I like spheres as well. I like the towers, I like the pyramids, but you don't actually get pyramids in Smoky Quartz as far as I know. Tumbled stones, obviously you can wear. It's often included in jewellery because they can carve it into certain shapes. If you do crystal healing treatments, you might want to have one of these generators in your room, or actually just in your gridding if you do gridding. If you're doing things like elixirs, I do think do your homework on where it was sourced, just to make sure that it hasn't been exposed to any toxic minerals during its formation. And just a reminder, if you've got a tumbled stone, you can always pop one into your bra or into a pouch. If you're a bloke and you want to wear it on your person, you can just pop it in a pocket, you know. So as a messenger, I have to say my first thoughts are that if somebody was to go to my, crystal lucky dip and pull out a smoky quartz, I would be saying, look, everything's contextual, but the first one that jumps out at me is it's time to pull your head out the clouds and plant your feet on the ground. It's all very well having dreams, but dreams will never come to fruition if there's no action applied to them. So get yourself grounded, get yourself connected, and start doing what you need to do and following your inner guidance to do what it is that makes your soul sing. And the best chances of success will be when your decisions are based on grounded, logical and practical responses. And don't let fear stand in your way. Don't let fear and doubt block you. Assess your fears, become aware of what they are, and learn to tell the difference between what's real, what's valid and what isn't. And I think that's probably it for the messenger bit. So when it comes to crystal care, if I can speak, all quartz is okay, I think, unless you've got it in a cluster. I'd revisit that going forward because I've noticed some damage to my amethyst cluster. You can actually rinse it with water, but drying it off is got to be the next thing. So it is fairly hardy. It does cope with a fair bit. So yeah, cleaning is one thing if you're not into the metaphysical. Drying off is another. Storing it is important because obviously it can be scratched by other hard crystals. But the other thing is too that it has capacity to scratch other softer crystals as well. So you need to take a little bit of care with how you store it. The other part though, from a metaphysical perspective, is actually clearing and keeping the smoky quartz working at an optimal level. Now I do have a video, I'll put a link in to that as well. They're going to be there within all of my videos going forward on crystals. But basically, yeah, you can use it any number of ways, and what your smoky quartz looks like is going to determine how you actually do that. So if you've got a large cluster, it's probably not going to be suitable to put it on selenite, which of course is my favorite. If you've got a tumble stone though, you could probably put it on the selenite without an issue. Well, there's no probably, you can do it. My smaller clusters that I've got, I do rest on selenite, but other options are to regularly sage. Now, one of the other things that I do as part of keeping the energy high in my room where all my crystals are is actually I use a candle to burn up any dross, and I will also use sage or incense or whatever that are dedicated to clearing and cleansing negativity, purification. So that's one aspect. I also know that lavender oil, I believe lavender oil is a wonderful purifier. So I will do essential oils and vaporization. But obviously it's up to the individual. So let me know what you do for it. As far as putting it out in the moonlight, I haven't done it, but I could do it. Well, I haven't done it recently. Sunlight, very, very mindful of sunlight in Australia, particularly where I live. And that's because we've got such a harsh sun, and it's associated with heat, and it will actually strip the colour out of your crystals. So just word of warning there. So my friends, if you've stuck in this far, well done. Thank you very much for being part of my journey. Look, as for me, I'm just going to let you know, if you're still here, I'm trying to get ahead of myself with the videos because I've got family coming next week. So obviously I'm talking a bit fast. I had some issues yesterday with technology, so I've got to re-record videos. But yeah, I'm just trying to get everything up. So either way, I'm going to say for now, I'm going to crack on and get on with the next videos just so that they can all be loaded and you get them in a timely way when the family comes to stay. Until the next video though, my friends, take care, have a blessed day. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.